A show based on the facts, honesty, the man, the myth, the legend. ChristiTutionalist Joseph M. Leonard.
Welcome to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP, in association with thelibertybeacon.com. And I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Lenard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the show, everyone. We like to think we are the highest form of life on this planet as far as intellect and civilization, if I can get my mouth to work with my brain here. It's been happening a whole lot lately. The mouth don't want to cooperate. As far as being civilized on this planet, but reality is we still have an animal side. And therefore, why I have with me guest Leslee Hall, author of Tracking Our Inner Animal, a next level understanding of what it means to be human. So first of all, welcome to the show, Leslee.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, before we get into the book, give us, the 411. If anybody uses that, I don't even know if you could dial 411 on the phone.
I don't know either. I understand the reference, though. So
that's good. At least you do, right? Some won't get it, but the inside track, the lowdown, some won't get that reference either. So, but yeah, a bit about your background, where you were from, where you are now, the yada 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 of what and who is Leslee Hall.
I grew up in Lower Alabama. A lot of people call it the original LA.
No, I couldn't tell by any accent there.
I can turn it on real thick if you want me to. I do that a lot when I'm trying to get a laugh out of somebody. I'll just intensify the southernness in my voice, and usually it works nearly 100% of the time. So I come from way down there, almost to the Gulf Coast, just a little ways north of the Gulf of Mexico, just slightly east of Mobile. That's the Mobile, Alabama, Pensacola, Florida. That's kind of the two cities right there amongst me. And I grew up I was born into a baseball family. That's what I thought I was going to do with most of my life, and I did for quite a while. Played through college, but that was the end of the road for me. And at that point, my hobby turned into more of a passion, more of a what's the right word for it? A quest, I guess, a journey. And I turned to music. I was still in college and joined the music program at the University of South Alabama and ended up with a business degree in corporate finance and a minor in percussion performance. And I did the corporate life for about 3 years. Then I trained my replacement and I hit the road with my band. And we had a really good time and met tons of people kind of touring the Southeast. And then that got a little old to me, so I wanted to move to Nashville and see if I could be a songwriter. So I came to Nashville in 2012 and ended up, having a residency gig on Lower Broadway here in Nashville for about 8 years, and everything was going really nicely. And then the pandemic happened, and I survived the pandemic. I was fortunate that I'd had a little bit of altitude before the engine shut off, and but the equation started saying maybe it's time to go back to Alabama. My family was getting older, and they're giving out all this free money, which having a finance background, I know if you increase the supply, I know what's going to follow that. And so it made logical sense. And I had the clarity of understanding that I'm an animal to help me make that decision. And so I went back in 21, and as it was, I made it home about 2 months before my grandfather finally passed. So I was there at the right time and helped the family carry that weight. And he lived to one day shy of his 91st birthday. So
Wow.
he lived the American dream for sure. He was, almost dirt floor poor as a kid, and retired and died in comfort. So it's hard for me to be sad about his passing because he won. You know what I mean? And then so I was doing my thing back down there. I picked up a lot of gigs along the Gulf Coast, my old stomping grounds, and in 2022, a friend of mine from here in Nashville, he had gotten a record deal back in 2019 and had been touring around. And in 2022, early 2022, he caught a little wind in the sails and started to really take off. And he called me and said, "Hey, I need some help. Can you come out with us to help me keep the wheels on the bus?" And I tried to tell him no to start with. And then I thought about it. I thought, a lot of people spend a lot of money for an opportunity like this, going to Belmont here. I'm actually in Nashville at the moment. And so I decided to go out with him, and it's been quite an adventure. We've been all over the country. We're going to Europe in August and early September for a string of shows over there. So music's been the gift that's kept on giving, man. Not only do I get to see the country and the world, I've met infinitely more people than I would have had I not chose this path. And I've really seen the whole of the human condition. You know what I mean? I've seen the good, and I've seen the great, and I've seen the bad, and I've seen the ugly. But it's for 8+ years, I was downtown Nashville in a worldwide tourist destination, sitting on a perch watching people. And it's very interesting to say the least. But as I'm watching and I'm learning about myself and navigating, success and catastrophe and the whole nine, it was kind of the darkest season of my life. When things just really were not going my way. And no matter how much I thought they should be going my way, they just weren't, And it was I kind of came from that small town life where, I got decent grades in school, and I was in the band, and I played baseball, and I just, accolades were not in short supply when I was growing up. But here I am away from home all of a sudden, and things aren't going my way. And so that was the crack in the one particular relationship that I lost, was the crack in my belief system that let a little bit of light in, and thought, well, if I believe this should be true and it's obviously not true, then what else do I believe to be true that may or may not be true? And so it kind of got me questioning myself and the way the world works. And one day, just looking for information on how to navigate this life, I came across an evolutionary biologist. And as I listened to him talk, it just really dawned on me that if I imagine myself as an animal, then my behavior makes a lot more sense. And then I thought, if I look at the world through that lens too, the world makes a lot more sense. And I started to understand how myself and the rest of the world could do things that were very obviously against their own best interest. That made no logical sense. Why, if this is the right thing to do, then why am I compelled to do the other thing?
Yeah. Well, looking on people seeing the video will probably my next direction think I'm off, but I make no bones about it. I use podcast guest lists. Here's your profile page. But when I saw just like that extreme close-up headshot of you, I thought, you know, we all have doppelgangers. I started thinking, wow, there's a little Lindsey Buckingham in there, a little Jeremy Renner, maybe even a little Colin Kaepernick and some Justin Timberlake. Who do people tell you you look like?
That's pretty high praise there, man, and I appreciate it. You know, I've only gotten one person multiple times, and that hasn't happened in a minute. But Mark Wahlberg was the one that I would get.
Huh. I don't quite see that, but
Yeah, you know,
I guess you know, from a distance and close up, we can look different.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't bring that up to I this is the first show that I can recall that I've ever brought up anybody's looks, and nothing for nothing there. You know, the only reason I did so was kind of a segue. As we're recording this will come out later. Timberlake, of course, is in the news, right? Looks don't mean it. MLK Jr., right? Content of character.
Right.
But with Justin Timberlake in the news, I've been telling the joke. I'll relate how it relates to this in your book. You know, we all know, or most should know, he did a song called Bringing Sexy Back while he was arrested for DWI, DUI, whatever. It's like, so I joke now, his PR team has said his next album is going to be Bringing Public Intoxication Back. But
he's ahead of the curve on that one for sure.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, I bring up that joke because that does speak to us as humans, being a Christian show, imperfect and frail, and someone in that world of celebrity getting that hubris head, the big head, like rules don't apply to me, and the don't you know who I am kind of thing. But even everyone, I think, it's important to understand we all have different, not schizophrenia, but to a degree that inner personalities. You know, we've got a joke side, a serious side, a hard side, a tender side. Those are kind of all inner personalities that compete. And, you know, like I saw a meme the other day, be more like a wolf pack. Because we all usually hear the lone wolf thing, but in reality, wolves are pack animals and they don't leave elderly or youth behind. The pack slows the herd movement to make sure they all stay together to protect one another.
Wolves are a pretty interesting study for sure.
Yeah, so in that respect, I would like us to be more animalistic than individualistic, or, you know, the out for ourselves kind of thing. Your thoughts?
Let's see. Like I said, wolves are an interesting story, and you're right. They operate as a pack. The purpose of the book is to try to separate the human from the animal and introduce them to each other, because when one can articulate to the other, you're able to make precise decisions. You're able to halt reactions, make decisions, those sorts of things. And it's important to understand that the animal and the human have different motivations. The animal only has two jobs in this life, and that's to survive and to reproduce. It only has five senses to interpret its environment. And through those five senses, take in environmental information, stimulus, threats, rewards, those sorts of things. And to your point about the different components of each of our personalities, those things are all in there. And depending on if we're not being conscious of our behavior, depending on our environment, that's which button's being pressed. So if I have a
which is dominant to the
Right.
other
So
reaction.
my humorous side is probably not going to be activated in a stressful environment, right? But the hard side or the fight side, that's the only three levers the animal has to pull in the face of a threat is freeze, fly, or fight. And so that fear will sometimes freeze us, that it'll make us run away, or it'll make us fight. And too often in our current world, the fight lever is pulled. And there's a lot of unnecessary suffering in this world. And I guess if I have an overarching mission, it is to try to ease some of that unnecessary suffering.
I hear you.
I know
great.
what this perspective has done for me. The ability to navigate precisely, the ability to not get forced off my path by whatever environmental stimulus or threat or whatever. It allows me to recognize a fear that's trying to freeze me and intellectually walk my way through that fear. I'll tell you, it's setting up this podcast. I told you this was only my second podcast. I harbor a fear of venturing out into this world because my world is very peaceful right now. I don't have any enemies. I don't have any.
You're opening up yourself,
right?
Yes.
And to open that door to allow all that good in also allows all the bad in.
And there's a lot of negative trolls. I just did an episode in June of the show Social Media and all the vile and nastiness and hate, and that we need to do more to bring pleasant. That's part of the joke I've told about the Timberlake thing, that we need to not bring sexy back, but bring pleasantries back with each other.
Right. And so, if I'm just walking through and I encounter an angry person, the natural thing is to go on alert. The animal's going to at least alert. It may run away, or it may decide that it's time to tell that person to stop being so nasty and fight. You know what I mean? So it gives me the clarity to know when I can help and when I cannot help, and when I should just get out of the way, because sometimes there's no help that can be received.
Right, because there's a difference. Like you said, the animal in the wild, or even humans in the wild, aside from city life, that is indeed much more need for that immediate animal instinct to kick in one way or another.
Right.
But us supposedly as a higher life form and civilized, I like how you use the phrase halt reactions, to not have that immediate knee-jerk, emotional, hysteric reaction. Process, think, be strategic. Like you said, that crazy person on the street, whatever, you didn't say that, but I'm saying that, right? What's the best way to interact here, or not interact at all, to lead to something more positive rather than that bad headbutting confrontation?
In that space, if you can engage the human and understand that, like, let me tell you a story. In 21, when I got back to Alabama, the state of the world, the first thing I wanted to do was plant a garden to see if I could grow some food. Because I didn't know which way the world was going to go. I could see I can make a real case either way.
It could have went off the cliff, yes.
So my family has a couple acres back home, so I disc up a piece of it and I grew a garden. And as most of us do in Alabama, we have one relative somewhere that is taking a bad path. You know what I mean? Methamphetamine is prevalent throughout the South, and I have a relative that couldn't stay away from it. And he was in and out of jail at the time, and he had a girlfriend that was about the same life that he was. And he had come home to live with my aunt, who also lived on the same little section of property. And every day I'd be out working in that garden, and he and his girlfriend, that's the nice term that I'm going to use for, they would lay on the trampoline in the shade and play on their phones, and I'd be out there sweating my behind off. And then, long story short, it came to our attention one night that he had been out to the garden and just helped himself. And that is absolutely not fair in my world. You know, I would have been glad to share with him had he shared in the work, but he had done none of that.
Or even asked with a please and
Right.
something. Yes, absolutely.
Precisely. And so standing in my grandmother's kitchen one night with my grandmother, my 86-year-old grandmother, my aunt, and another aunt comes in and shows me picture evidence on her phone that my cousin had done what he had done. And immediately I feel the shoulders broaden, you know, I feel it coming up my spine. You know that adrenaline surge, that rage that comes.
Yeah.
And I guess my grandmother saw that too. And about that time, my 86-year-old frail little grandmother put her arm around my waist. And I'm in the middle of a full-blown rage explosion. And I've got my grandmother's arm around my waist. And I was able to understand I'm having an animal reaction. I'm getting chemicals from my animal brain right now. And I'm going to breathe through this and it's going to dissipate. And so as my grandmother's putting her arm around my waist, I put my arm around her shoulders. And now I'm in the midst of a full-blown rage attack and being gentle with my grandmother. I was having emotions that I wasn't responding to. I was having an animal reaction where I had a hold of the leash and I was holding it, because the other reaction is to flip the table upside down and run out saying a whole string of curse words that would, make my grandmother question who I am, and but I was able to not do that simply because I understand I'm having an animal reaction. Another time I was faced with a heckler in downtown Nashville.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ed Bondarenka, and I host Your American Heritage on Saturdays at 2 in the afternoon on this station. Your American Heritage is a show about the struggle we find ourselves in and how to react to it in the light of our biblical and American heritage. Listen to it while you're working around the house, the garage, cleaning the guns, walking the dog, driving, or just lazing around. Join me at 2 o'clock Saturdays here on Wham Radio, 1600 AM, 92.7 FM.
God bless America.
Oh, and, during a live event?
Right. I was playing a friend of mine, my friend Steven, a dear friend of mine, musical friend of mine. We were playing an acoustic duo set in downtown Nashville, and this one guy was just drunk and being obnoxious, and I gave him a little bit of attention, hoping that would be enough to, pet him on the head and make him go away. That wasn't, just encouraged him. So finally I kind of had to check him a little bit. And in doing so, I just asked him, "Hey man, would you please stop yelling at me?" I didn't call him anything that I wanted to call him. I just asked him very politely. Well, since he had been checked, now he was embarrassed. And somehow or another, he was still there at the end of the night. And I heard him in the back running his mouth. I told him this perspective was brand new to me at that time. I had just kind of had the idea and was kind of feeling it out amongst the world and talking to my friends about it. I hadn't written the book yet. And so I told my friend Steven, I said, "Hey man, that dude's still running his mouth back there. So this is a perfect time for me to practice what I preach. I'm not going to have an animal reaction when faced with this dude." And so eventually I have to walk past him and he says, "Hey man, come here. I'm going to teach you a lesson." And I just stopped. And I turned around and I looked at him and I said, "Man, it's time for me to go home." And I picked up my guitar in my bag and left and went home and made some food and watched a little TV and slept like a baby that night. Come to find out, he was blowing everyone's phone up that night. He was a regular there, and I didn't know any of this at the time, but he was a regular there who knew the owner and was going to get me fired and all this sort of thing. And, the next day, because I didn't have that reaction, I looked like the coolest guy in the world and he looked like the biggest douchebag in the world. Whereas if I would have had an animal reaction and we would have had to fight I'm certainly not a fighter, but if that would have been the case, then I could have gotten fired for that, and that was my entire livelihood, and it was a good livelihood. And I could have let one simple animal reaction to somebody that means nothing to me cost me my livelihood and significantly alter the course of my life. You know, I would have to go do something else or look for other gigs or whatever the case may be. But because I was able to recognize what's happening and not have a reaction, stay in my human, I faced zero consequence. I slept like a baby that night. I didn't even have to come down from an adrenaline rush, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's things like that. Another time, driving to work in downtown Nashville, and I had this trucker. I still don't know what I did, but he got pretty angry at me and come flying past me, hand on the horn, you know, making all sorts of noise. And as he gets in front of me, kind of darts in my lane for a minute. And that would usually piss folks off. You know what I mean? But instead, my immediate reaction was that dude must be having a bad day. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
so it's just, you know, I could have gotten into a road rage war with did I say that right? Road rage war.
Yeah.
Say that one fast, right? And so I could have gotten into this, you know, battle for territory with this big rig, and I drive a Toyota 4Runner, so that could have gone really, really ugly.
Yeah.
And so it allows me to extend grace whenever it's available to be extended, when it's deserved, and it just, like I said, man, it's just made my life infinitely more peaceful.
Yeah, we may not always have a choice in the people and places and time we come upon something, but
100%.
to your point, it is like we have a choice in how we react.
Right.
If we keep our civilized brain above the animal, sometimes we react badly, and you know, we may later come to regret that, right? You know,
right.
It's like,
we usually do.
We only harm ourselves in that case, right? Because that regret can nag at us for a long time afterwards. So yeah, that, like you said, halting a reaction, take a tick to try to, think over emotion.
Right.
Logic and reason that this show deals in all the time, rather than emotional hysterics.
Right.
And to what, choking at that point, having on that choice and making the wrong one. But back to your garden, I've said many times on this show the politics side of things, the Bradford colony, the Mayflower Compact, right? No doubt in school you were taught to regurgitate the Bradford colony and the Mayflower Compact, but they don't teach you the whole story, which is they almost all starved to death because more and more people were becoming like your cousin and wanted to participate in the reaps of what was sown, but not participate.
Right.
So communism, basically.
Yeah.
And Bradford and the colony at that point, starving, pivoted away from the communal aspect. And again, community in the Bible is great. It's voluntary. It's choice. It's charity, as opposed to communism that was derived from it, which is force. Forcing those who engage in the labor to share with those who don't. It didn't work. And as I say, the rest is history, right? Bradford introduced individual freedoms, personal responsibility, because the Bible says there's a difference between the unwilling and the unable.
Right.
Your cousin was certainly able. He was unwilling, which means you have no responsibility, or I can't think of the word, beyond responsibility. No You don't owe him.
Obligation.
Out there's the
Yeah.
word. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No obligation at that point to him if he does nothing.
Right. I'm all for social programs. I hope that they are used to regain footing and then venture back out. And
Charity.
There's always going to be abuse.
A hand up, now they hand out.
Right. Absolutely. Without the human being engaged, the animal doesn't have access to the higher functioning tools, the logic and reason, time in an abstract form, language, morality, any of that. The animal reacts as its environment requires it does. Should definitely say at some point that my goal is not to kill the animal, because the animal is very useful. There are times where you don't want to have to think how to react. If you're being chased by a grizzly bear, you don't want to stop and do some math about, okay, how fast do I need to run? How fast is it running? At what distance is it trying to cover? Sort of thing. You just want to
get the hell out of there. Yeah.
Right. If you've got a spider on your head, you don't want to have to calculate anything. You want the animal to react. And, of course, the animal is heavily involved in relationship and love and romance and lust and the whole nine. And so you just want to be able to understand what it's trying to tell you without language. Those are those feelings, I hear all the time, trust your gut. And I don't think that's good advice. I don't think trusting your gut is good advice. I think communicating.
Or your heart.
Right.
Trust
all,
your
all
heart.
the same euphemisms for emotion.
Yeah.
Those emotions are absolutely valuable, but they have to be interpreted by the human. And if the animal feels something, then it's up to me to decide what to do about that feeling, rather than just let that feeling move me. Because sometimes you look at the world today, and there are a lot of people who have zero real problem in this world, but they still suffer with depression. And that's the animal trying to say, hey, move. We need this set of habits, this set of circumstances that we have developed for ourselves is not working for us. Let's move. And it's trying to, create the pain that is a catalyst to move to a different space. And if you can't talk to the animal, even without its language, then you're probably going to get stuck there for a little while. Hopefully you eventually come out of there. But
And well,
so
back to like your cousin, in the throes of an addictive substance, that if the human part can't help get over it, the animal dependency there, it kind of stuck him in that animal level, as opposed to being able to get beyond that, I would say.
And that stuff, a lot of substances completely diminish the human faculty. And I've seen, unfortunately, I've seen that stuff fairly up close. I haven't lived in a tent city or anything like that, but I've known multiple people that have fallen victim to it. It's pretty prevalent in the South, as most can imagine. And the human element disappears, man. Logic and reason mean nothing.
Yeah.
For those folks when they're in the throes of that addiction.
I don't know who it was. I heard her, it was a she, on the radio the other day. She might have been on Wham Radio. I interact with Wham Radio here in Michigan all the time. Might have been a guest on one of my friend's shows there, and she was saying that right through that addictive period that it took her a long time to come back from and get off the substance. It was an opioid issue, right? And to come off it, like I myself took Xanax, 2 a day for a 3.5-year period. And I'm not an addictive personality type person. So that human side said, okay, now's the time to come off that. I don't need that every day. But the physical withdrawals are very real. So the human has to really want to come off it because that physical withdrawal addictive side is indeed there. So I've known that physical withdrawal feeling, and she said
that pain wants to push you right back into it.
Yes, there is that craving, and she spoke to the same thing of it took her a while and needed help to get back to her life what it was before she landed up hooked on the opioids. At any rate, I'm going to wrap it up here. Give us your book title and, of course, the usual places to get it. If you've got a website, all that sorts of stuff.
I'm busy working on the infrastructure, the website and the social media and stuff like that. But the book is available. I got it right here. I'll show you what it looks like. That's what it looks like there. It's called Tracking Our Inner Animal.
I like that. For those hearing on audio only, there's like wolf or something there. The eyes to show the animal, and it's saying tracking our inner animal, the next level understanding of what it means to be human. And
that's it.
Amazon and all that.
It's on Amazon, yes, sir. I've also created being in the music side of things, but made this thing fun. But I did an audio book as well. I recorded it. I narrated it. I had my friend Steven that I mentioned earlier. He helped master it for release, but it's on Audible. So Amazon and Audible right now are the two places.
All right. And then from there, you'll probably branch out, although 80% of all books, they say these days, are sold through Amazon. So, yeah.
It's a pretty handy tool. I do intend to create some more infrastructure, though. There's a YouTube channel in the works. There's going to be a podcast eventually. I've started trying to do these types of podcasts and also creating a music one at the moment. So this one will follow YouTube channel and that sort of thing. But
yeah.
You need
you need a copy of the book I just dropped in May, Podcasting Quick Start Guide.
I certainly do. That might be a really handy tool for me.
Book a podcast. Start slow, right? Don't bite. You don't go and try to bite off a bison, right? Well, what's the way to eat an elephant? As we say, one bite at a time, right? Start slow. Maybe say, hey, I'm going to be You don't say, hey, I'm going to be the next Rush Limbaugh and do noon to 3, Monday through Friday. No, you need a big infrastructure for that. So start off with, once a month, then you can go to once a week and then more. I'm now dropping interview shows like this midweeks on Wednesdays now to add more. But start slow and then grow.
I appreciate that. I'm going to hang on. I'm going to use that. Start slow and then grow.
Yeah. Well, my podcasting quick start guide, as well as my how to write a book and get it published. You don't need that one. You've got one already published. But those are, of course, available at Amazon and everywhere. So thank you for dropping by, Leslie. I greatly appreciate it. I'm glad I'm only your second podcast, so that's great. Yeah, that's hopefully bring a lot of people in. And also, as I said, I use Podcast Guest List. I found you there, so people can find you at Podcast Guest Lists also. All right, thanks. I hope you have a great day, Leslie.
Thanks, man. You too. It's been a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having tuned in for ChristiTutionalist Politics Show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you, or autographed copies are available online direct from me via terrorstrikes.info/shop. Be sure to check out more about today's discussion at thelibertybeacon.com, where my articles drop every Saturday. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff, no fancy high production intro or inserts, at least yet, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help to grow the show.
It is a myth that terrorism stopped during COVID. Unfortunately, mainstream media opted to prioritize pandemic hysteria over promoting all news. Terrorism continues. Simply hoping that it doesn't affect you is not a strategy. The new book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you, featured on The Author Show, is now available in paperback from bookstores, online, or as an ebook exclusively through Amazon Kindle. Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you by Joseph M. Leonard. Order today.